Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut a sweetheart keyhole neckline bustier pattern. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern paper, and I've gone ahead to mark up my basic measurement, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, and shoulder to waistline. Now I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2 plus ½ inch, making it 7.5, and I'll go ahead to mark the basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches, and I'm going to go ahead to connect. But what we have on the pattern is a bit high, so you can use 3 inches and 2.5 inches for the depth. So from my shoulder divided by 2 plus half, I'll go down by 1 inch, and I'll go ahead to connect for my shoulder slope. After I'm done marking this, the next step is to go ahead to find your armhole or your chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Now I'm going to draw a straight line connecting to that point, and after that I'll place my ruler and I'll connect at that point I have there, and that will be serving as my chest line. So now I'll divide my armhole into 2, and I'll mark and then come in by ½ inch from that point. At the chest line, I'll go down and mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'll place my curve through connecting from my bust circumference divided by 4 to the ½ inch at the armhole and to the upper part of my shoulder. So I'll just go ahead and I will use my marker to outline my pattern. So after I'm done doing this, you want to go ahead and mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2. So my nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5, or you can also call it your bust span divided by 2. And after I'm done marking, I'm just going to go ahead to connect all the way from the bust down to the under bust and to the waistline. Now I'll be marking 1 inch that intake on both sides of the pattern. So if you're busty or you're on a plus size, go ahead to use 1.5 inches for your dart intake. Now I'm going to connect from the under bust to the waist, and I'll go ahead to repeat this at the other side also. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to place my curved rule touching my bust down to the under bust pattern, and I'm going to repeat the same process at the other side of my pattern this way. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just use my marker to blend out that part of my bustier pattern. So next, I'm going to be measuring about 1.5 inches on top of my chest line. So you can go ahead and also use 2 inches for this. After that, I'll be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2 again at that point. Now I'll go ahead to place my curved rule and I'll connect it to that point. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to draw out a fence line at that point, which will help serve as a guide when I'm drawing out the neckline of this pattern. I'll be marking 1 inch dart intake on both sides of this pattern, and I'm going to go ahead to connect it all the way from that point down to my bust, and I'll be repeating the same process at the other side of my pattern. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead and use my marker to outline it to make it more visible for you to see on both sides of my pattern. So now I'm going to be inserting my body measurement. At the bust, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and I'm going to replace it. And after marking that, I'll go ahead to add my sewing allowance. At the under bust, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and I'll be adding the sewing allowance. At the waistline, go ahead to mark your waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it again, and add your sewing allowance. So when you're adding your sewing allowance, you can use 1.5 inches, 2 inches, or 2.5 for your sewing allowance. I'll connect from the under bust right to the bust, and I'll go ahead to take it all the way to the waistline. So this is what I have after I'm done cutting out, and I'll just go ahead to outline the sides of the pattern. So now I'll go ahead and work on the neckline of this pattern. I'll connect from my chest line to the 1.5 inches I have on top of my pattern, and I'll go ahead to use my marker to connect. So remember, this dart we have here, to replace it on our pattern, I'll be coming out by that dart measurement at the armhole, and I'll go ahead to extend it. This is to make sure that what you have on the yoke is going to fit what you have at the lower part of your bustier pattern, especially when you sew up your dart. Now I'll come down by 1 inch or 0.75 inches. It totally depends on what you want on that point, and I'll be extending it to the lower part of my pattern. So I'll go ahead and measure about 2 inches from here, or you can use 2.5 inches, and I'll go ahead to connect. So after I'm done connecting, this is what I have. I'll still go ahead to use my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see. So here is my sweetheart keyhole neckline bustier pattern. If you have any question regarding the front part, please don't forget to leave your question at the comment section, and I'll just go ahead to cut out this pattern. So after I'm done cutting out my pattern, this is what I have. And if you notice, if you join your bustier at the top, it's going to match up with what you have at the yoke part. So now we'll head over to the back pattern, and for the back pattern I have this basic back pattern, which can also serve for a bustier or a corset back pattern. So I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurements just like we did for the front part of this pattern, and now I also added a zipper allowance, and for the neckline at the back I used 3 by 2 inches. So I'll just go ahead to draw this out. That is the chest line of this pattern. So now I'm going to be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2, just like we did for the front part of this pattern. So my nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5. I'll just go ahead to connect my lines, which is the 3.5 inches. So remember, all your measurements is starting immediately after the zipper. So I went ahead to mark 1/2 inch on both sides of my waist, and I'll be extending it up. So after I'm done marking this, the next step I'll take is to insert my body measurement on the pattern. So after marking my dart intake, I'm going to impute my measurements. I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll mark and add my sewing allowance. So for the under bust, I'll mark also the under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake and add my sewing allowance. At the waist length, you want to mark your waist circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake and mark, and I'll add my sewing allowance. So the next step I'll take is to go ahead to connect from the waist to the underbust, and from the underbust to the bust line and chest line, and I'll just go ahead to come down by 1 inch from the neckline of my pattern, and I'll be connecting it to my nipple to nipple point. So you can use a freehand sketch to do that, or you can just use your curved rule to connect from that point down to your nipple to nipple divided by 2. So now I'll mark 0.25 on top to get rid of any excess on the yoke, and for this part I'll mark 1/2 inch to get rid of the bulginess at the back of the dress, and I'll extend this up. So here is my basic back pattern, and this pattern can serve for a bustier pattern and also for a corset pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So if you have any question regarding this tutorial, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any question regarding this tutorial, please don't forget to leave it at the comment section. So for the dart part of this dress, you can just go ahead to cut it, slit it into two, or you can just cut it as one piece like I'm doing and blend in your dart. So I'm done cutting out my back pattern. So this is what I have. Please don't forget to join us in our next video.